So yeah, that's exactly what our counties look like, exactly. I kind of like the fact that I live in Kansas and he's always shouting out Kansas. And that's why, like farmland and stuff, like you may not have neighbors for a few miles because in the country there's just not that many people. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It is your favorite boy from the Midwest, Ethan, and today we're going to be doing another video by Lawrence and his channel Lost in the Pond. Earlier this week I did a video between the UK and the US farmland, and you guys seem to really enjoy it, and I really enjoyed it. So I decided to do another video of his between the UK and the US counties. The title is kind of what drew me in because I know that there's counties over in the UK. Obviously there's counties over here, but I don't really know what the differences would or could be. So that is what we're doing here today. We're going to be learning between the differences between UK and US counties. But before we get into the video, guys, let's see if we can get 500 likes on this video. It really does help out with the YouTube algorithm, and it also lets me know that you guys like this type of content. As always though, you feel free to go check me out on Instagram. You can message me there. You can go join the channel's Discord and interact with other people of the channel. Feel free to leave a comment down below. Also, if you're new to the channel, watch the video through. If you like this content, please consider subscribing and join this awesome YouTube family that we have going on. When I hit 50K, I'm going to be buying some of the plane tickets, so I'm looking forward to that. I hope you guys are looking forward to that. Hopefully that's coming sooner than later. Anyway, guys, with that being said, let's get in this video and learn between the difference between the US and UK counties.
Having lived, worked and consumed bad whiskey in both countries, I also bear the legendary distinction of having lived in 7 different counties, 3 in Britain and 4 in the US. So you could say that I'm more primed than most to reveal the gripping truth about these riveting, if procedural, regions. And the central truth is that British and American counties are very, very different. Residents in Gloucester.
Like I said in the previous video, that's one thing I really like about Lawrence and his channel is he has long-term lived experience in both countries. So he really is coming from a position of personal experience.
County New Jersey would hardly recognise Gloucestershire, England, but mostly because it was invaded by sheep. And so, without further ado, here are 5 ways that British and American counties are very different. In Britain, defining a county is complicated. In general, the counties are subnational divisions used for demarcating between administrative, geographical and political regions. In my home country of England, there are 48 ceremonial counties, that is, counties to which Lord Lieutenant, as in personal representatives of the Queen, are appointed. And yes, I know the whole of British life sounds made up. But then you also have the 39 historic counties that were established by the time of the 11th century Norman conquest. These largely overlap with the ceremonial counties, and it's all highly confusing, and just reading about it makes me want to take up drinking again. In short, the counties of England are used for a variety of purposes. In non-metropolitan counties, local services are provided by county councils and often district councils. So for example, it's the county council who comes and takes away your rubbish every, 4 years. In metropolitan areas such as Greater Manchester, services are provided by district councils, and what does that mean? I don't know. In the United States, a county is an administrative or political subdivision normally consisting of some level of governance. The various powers afforded to counties do vary by state, and to list them all would take until the 41st century. Basically, depending on where you live, counties might provide services such as courts, public utilities, libraries, hospitals, public health, parks, roads and law enforcement. And on that last point, there's one commonality among US counties that surprisingly wasn't just a made-up movie trope or a figment of my imagination, and it's this: most of them have actual sheriffs. In fact, one of the first things I noticed after starting my new life in the US was the abundance of yard signs bearing words like "Vote J.W. Pepper for County Sheriff," "J.W. Pepper, he gets things done." Now this might sound odd coming from a person whose own country once appointed Professor Snape as the Sheriff of Nottingham, but these days the role of sheriff is a largely ceremonial affair in Britain. It's such a rarely discussed aspect of British life that it likely comes as a surprise to most Brits that the country even has sheriffs. All that aside though, the United States, made up of 50 states, has considerably more counties.
So yeah, that's exactly what our counties look like, exactly. I obviously am in Kansas over here, and all the counties look really, really boring. They are just like almost perfectly rectangular square. He is right though on what counties provide over here. So really what a county does for us though is like a mini state government. they uphold the state laws at a local level. That way people can be heard much faster as opposed to trying to have to go to the state capitol every time you need something. One thing though is counties provide all licenses. So you can get your driver's license, your marriage license, you can get divorced. Child guardianship cases can be settled at your county courthouse. Almost all counties I've ever been to, they have a courthouse in the county seat. I actually live in a county seat, so we have a courthouse, we have our jail, we have a county sheriff. So there's a lot of things that the counties do other than just provide courts, libraries, hospitals, parks, roads. One big difference in most counties is you have the cities and then you have the counties. So the cities in the county usually provide most of the services as a city. And then once you go outside those city limits, you're in the county. Then the county has to provide water, sewer, trash, electric, internet, roads, all that stuff becomes the county. But a lot of times you will go out like outside city and then like those city roads get worse depending on what city you live in because the county doesn't do as much upkeep a lot of the times, honestly. Another thing that the county would do is they will subcontract out a lot of stuff. So even though the county provides like internet and electricity, it's not like a government mandated thing. They just have a contract with a company that comes in and provides those services for the people in the said county.
Than Britain. Actually, so do some states, which is where we get into shape and size. On a map, the first thing you notice about British counties is that they all look completely different and jarringly similar at the same time. And if you stare at them long enough, you start to see stuff. Like for instance, Norfolk looks like a not fully rendered fish, West Sussex resembles a chilled out Highland cow,
square, though.
and Northampton...
None of them are like square though, they're all like super jagged and like kind of weird shaped.
Bad interpretation of what a child thinks a sheep is. On the other hand, when I moved to Indiana all those years ago, I was struck by how rectangular everything was. Indeed, this included the state itself if it was painted by Salvador Dali. And the same is true of many of its counties. While Britain doesn't believe in straight borders, Indiana can't get enough of them. And it's not just the Hoosier state. As outlined in a previous video, the United States is absolutely obsessed with rectangles, from those in its flag to those in its land. And let's all take a moment to appreciate the sheer majesty of Kansas, which looks almost exact.
I kind of like the fact that I live in Kansas and he's always shouting out Kansas. But yeah, Kansas is like a perfect rectangle. Other than that little bitty curve up in the northeast, it's just crazy. Like even just looking, almost all the counties are like perfect squares. This looks like a freaking checkerboard, pretty much.
Exactly like a patchwork duvet. Now, admittedly, not all states fit this bill. While the Texas Panhandle is primed to hold the world's largest game of tic-tac-toe, irregular shapes do make up much of the US county map. However, unlike in Britain, the vast majority of these include...
Hey, my home state, Missouri. Yeah, Missouri's a little bit more cut up, for sure.
In the state of Missouri, that's shaped kind of like the state of Missouri, often have at least one straight boundary. Either way, British and American counties come in all shapes, not to mention these. You know the drill. I'm Lawrence and I definitely don't have a size complex. That said, I can hardly compare British and American counties without discussing land area. The counties of Britain have evolved over the years, but these days the largest is often believed to be the behemoth that is North Yorkshire. But that isn't technically true, because even though it measures in at 3,341 square miles and is certainly the largest county in England, there's an even larger subdivision in Scotland. The Highland Council area, home to almost 250,000 people, is about 10,000 square miles in area. Now, the main reason this only made it in on a technicality is that Scotland no longer has counties, but many of its council areas continue to operate via the names and functions of when it did. Unusually, despite boasting more than 3,000 counties of its own, the contiguous United States, whose states tend toward having tight clusters of smaller counties, can't compete with Britain size-wise.
Actually, the interesting fact I found out when I was researching this was there's over 3,000 counties in the US, but half the population lives in just 143 counties. So just to give you guys an idea, because I don't know if you guys know this, there's like 360 million people in the US, and 50% live in only 143 counties out of over 3,100. A lot of people are still like bottled up in cities. And that's why, like farmland and stuff, like you may not have neighbors for a few miles because in the country there's just not that many people. Like most developed nations, most people like kind of go towards the cities.
The only exception to this is San Bernardino County in California, which is twice the size of the Highland Council area and also 4 times bigger than Northern Ireland. However, once you leave the lower 48, the US starts to produce counties that put even bigger nations to shame. In fact, in Alaska, there are 2 that not only outsize the UK's biggest counties, but the UK itself. The smallest of these is the North Slope Borough, which is a tiny fraction larger than the Great Lakes, which are a tiny fraction larger than the UK. And then there's the Yukon Kuyook Census Area. How do you say that? The Yukon Kuyook Census Area, which is considerably larger than the UK, and it even makes a mockery of this fact by cheekily featuring the letters UK in its name 3 times. It's worth noting, however, that the area is the least densely populated county equivalent in the US, housing just 5,000 people. And
a lot of you guys have asked me what the Midwest is. I'll post a picture of it down in the description below, but just to let you guys know what states are part of the Midwest, it's North Dakota, South Dakota, Nebraska, Kansas, Missouri, Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio. We're really known for farming and raising animals, and that's kind of what the Midwest is known for, is its agriculture. Some interesting facts about Alaska: not only is it just freaking massive, it only has 700,000 people though, so it's like one of the most least populated states. Also, an interesting fact is it actually has the highest crime per capita. I'm not exactly for sure why. I've heard it's like almost like the Wild West out there. I've also heard that there's a huge number of men as opposed to women. And so it's just like a bunch of guys in Alaska, and there's just not a lot of law and order is what I've heard. Not for sure if that's actually absolutely true, but it still is a really interesting state.
I say county equivalent because, like Scotland, Alaska doesn't refer to its administrative regions as counties, but as something else entirely, which brings us on to this. For the most part, it's true that both countries refer to first-order subdivisions as counties, but as with all matters of language, there are exceptions. Famously, most English counties are known colloquially as shires, a tradition maintained for hundreds of years by hobbits, but also textbooks. A shire county is one that is not metropolitan and usually ends predictably in the suffix shire. And Americans, I know what you're thinking, wouldn't it be really quaint if the United States had shire counties? It did. In 1634, King Charles I of England ordered a restructuring of local governance in the Virginia colony, leading to the development of 8 shires. They were English, they were here to stay, and they were soon rebranded as counties, but most of these do still exist. Meanwhile, as I alluded to earlier, Scotland, which has its own historic shires, has ceased referring to its first-order subdivisions as counties, but rather council areas. Back across the pond, 48 of the 50 states use the term county, which means there are 2 exceptions. Firstly, Alaska is organized into boroughs and census areas. Now, I say organized, but a big chunk of the state is actually wrapped up in something called, and I'm not making this up, the unorganized borough. This region is made up of subsections not contained within the state's 19 organized boroughs and is not itself a borough. And yes, I'm just as lost as you.
I actually came across this when I was looking up what exactly county does, because I wasn't 100% for sure what a county as opposed to a city is responsible for. And sometimes it's even confusing because sometimes they kind of merge together and do work as one, or then other times the city can contract the county to do stuff for it. So it really just depends on the area and depends on the state. But yeah, Alaska is really weird that they have one boroughs, like what the hell is that? And then they have this unregistered one.
Meanwhile, influenced by its colonial French and Spanish past, Louisiana is made up of 64 unassuming county equivalents known as parishes. Though funnily enough, one of these is actually named Assumption. And speaking of county names, let's finish with this. As we've all...
I'm pretty sure they're just called parishes because at one time they were like under the Catholic Church, but I'm pretty sure that the parishes still hold the same responsibilities and do the same things that a county does. So it's really, I think, just a name game at that point.
Already established, the majority of British counties carry the shire suffix. Many of those counties were established at different times during the last 1,000 years or so and are usually named for their county town. However, let's not forget that there are multiple big players that have never carried the Shire suffix because they were named long before the whole craze took off. These include the likes of Essex and Sussex, both formerly Anglo-Saxon kingdoms from the 6th century. And then you also have the likes of Devon, Dorset and Somerset that previously carried the Shire suffix but no longer do. Meanwhile, over in the United States, it can sometimes feel like I'm living in an alternate universe. While no shires remain, 4 counties, Berkshire, Massachusetts, Cheshire, New Hampshire, Hampshire, West Virginia and Hampshire, Massachusetts,
of course,
were
on the East
all
Coast.
named after shire counties in England. However, unlike their namesakes, each is succeeded by the word county. Nonetheless, this list should tell you 2 things. Number 1, the East Coast has a lot of British-inspired county names, and number 2, in America there appears to be no rule stating that the same county name can't be used again in another state.
Oh, yeah,
Both
for sure.
observations can be adequately summed up by the existence of Essex County. All 5 of them. And if you think that's a lot, let me know if you live in Lincoln County, because the United States has 24 of those. And surprisingly, not all of these were named after Honest Abe. A handful drew inspiration from the seemingly unrelated general Benjamin Lincoln, while Lincoln County, Maine was named for the English city. What's more, Lincoln County is only the 5th most common county name in the United States. Unsurprisingly, the number 1 spot belongs to another president, a certain George Washington. In all, if you live in the United States, there's a 62% chance that you live in a state with a Washington County. And that's because there are 31 Washington counties. In general, the US specializes in counties that were named after prominent people, particularly presidents and founding fathers, but also cities, states, native tribes, and even crops and resources. And on a personal note, I'll leave you now with the crucial knowledge that the US boasts 11 Lawrence counties, 9 Brown counties, and 4 states that have both. I've lived in 2 of those states.
Thanks to Lawrence for making this video. I always find his videos really interesting. It's definitely interesting to see the differences in the counties or like farmland, just in the differences between the US and the UK. Obviously, besides like shape and size and everything, there's obviously a ton of similarities because America obviously took the idea of counties from Britain, brought it over here, and then they just incorporated it with the new government that they founded. Anyway, guys, that's all I have for this video. If you guys have any more questions on US counties, comment below. My questions on UK counties is I'd like to know a little bit more of how they run on a governmental stance. So if there's a good video that goes into detail of that, or if you guys know, also comment below for that. Anyway, guys, that's all I have for this video. Please be safe, take care, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.